I thought we were celebrating Easter together, but when I arrived, my family had already left. My aunt texted, "We thought you'd be late." My cousin said, "We couldn't keep waiting." I walked away without looking back, but what happened next was unthinkable. I, 32M, stood in the empty driveway of my grandmother's house, staring at the remnants of what should have been our family Easter gathering. Plastic cups littered the lawn, and I could smell the lingering barbecue smoke that told me everything I needed to know. They had eaten without me. My phone buzzed. A text from my aunt saying they thought I'd be late, like I always am. Another from my cousin explaining they couldn't keep waiting. The food was getting cold, she said. The kids were hungry. I had driven 3 hours to be here, taken time off work, bought gifts for everyone. But apparently, being 15 minutes past the suggested arrival time was enough reason to start without me. This wasn't the first time. Last Christmas, they opened presents while I was stuck in traffic. My birthday dinner 2 months ago got moved up an hour because someone else had plans. There was always an excuse, always a reason why I was the afterthought. I walked back to my car and drove home in silence, my trunk still full of Easter baskets I'd spent hours preparing. But as I sat in my apartment that night, something shifted inside me. The hurt transformed into something colder, more calculated. They wanted to treat me like I didn't matter? Fine. I'd show them what it felt like to be forgotten. The plan started small. When my aunt called the next week asking if I could help move furniture, I told her I was busy. When my cousin needed someone to watch her kids for a last-minute date night, I suddenly had other commitments. Every family group chat went unanswered. Every invitation was politely declined. At first, they barely noticed. But as weeks turned into months, the calls became more frequent, more desperate. My grandmother's 80th birthday was coming up, and suddenly everyone remembered how much they needed me. I was the one who usually organized these things, who made the reservations, who coordinated with everyone's schedules. I let them scramble. When my aunt finally called to ask if I was planning the party, I told her I assumed someone else would handle it since they seemed to manage fine without me at Easter. The silence on the other end was deafening. They ended up throwing together a last-minute dinner at a chain restaurant. No decorations, no special cake, no thought put into it at all. My grandmother later told me how disappointed she was, but she didn't know the real reason behind the disaster. That's when I realized how much power I actually held in this family. I was the glue, the one who kept everyone connected, who remembered birthdays and anniversaries, who made sure no one was left out. Without me, they were just a group of people who occasionally shared DNA. But this was just the beginning. I started documenting everything. Screenshots of group chats where they made plans without including me. Records of family events I wasn't invited to or was told about last minute. Photos from social media showing them together while I was absent. I built a comprehensive timeline of neglect. Then I discovered something interesting while helping my grandmother with her computer. She had been leaving me money in her will, a substantial amount that I had no idea about. But more importantly, she had also been planning to leave her house to me, the one who she said always made time for her, who never forgot to call, who brought her groceries when she was sick. The house where they held their precious Easter gathering without me. That night, I called my grandmother and had a long conversation about family values, about who really showed up when it mattered, about the difference between being present and just being invited. I didn't manipulate her, didn't ask for anything. I just listened as she talked about feeling forgotten by her own children, about how I was the only one who seemed to genuinely care about her well-being rather than just appearing for major holidays. She made a decision that week to change her will entirely. Not just the money or the house, but everything. She wanted it all to go to someone who had proven they valued family, someone who wouldn't abandon her when it became inconvenient. But I wasn't done yet. I started a blog. Anonymous, of course, but detailed. I wrote about family dynamics, about how some relatives treated others like backup plans, about the emotional toll of being consistently overlooked. I shared strategies for dealing with toxic family relationships, for setting boundaries, for finding chosen family when biological family fails you. The blog gained traction. Hundreds, then thousands of people shared similar stories. I realized I wasn't alone in this experience. Comments poured in from people who recognized their own families in my words. Some thanked me for giving them permission to step back from relationships that drained them. Others shared their own revenge stories. That's when I decided to go bigger. I created a social media account dedicated to exposing family manipulation tactics. Still anonymous, But I started sharing those screenshots I'd collected, the documentation of years of being treated as an afterthought. Obviously, I blurred out identifying information, but the patterns were clear. One post went viral. It was a simple screenshot of a group chat where my family was planning a surprise party for my uncle. 14 messages back and forth about timing, location, who would bring what, who would pick up the cake. At no point did anyone mention including me, even though I lived closer to the venue than half of them. The internet was brutal in their judgment. Comments flooded in calling out the family's behavior, sharing their own similar experiences, offering support and validation that I'd been craving for years. Some suggested more extreme revenge tactics that I filed away for later consideration. My phone started ringing constantly. My aunt, my cousin, even relatives I rarely spoke to, all wanting to know if I had seen the viral post about family exclusion that looked suspiciously familiar. I played dumb, expressed shock that someone would share such private family business online, agreed that it was terrible behavior that needed to stop. The paranoia was delicious. They started scrutinizing every family group chat, being overly inclusive to the point of ridiculousness, second-guessing every plan. The natural flow of their family communication became stilted and artificial as they tried to avoid creating more content that might end up online. But the real masterstroke was still to come. My grandmother's health took a downer in that fall. Nothing serious, just the usual complications of aging, but it meant more doctor visits, more help needed around the house. Guess who stepped up? Not the family members who lived 10 minutes away and had been celebrating Easter without me. They were too busy, had too many commitments, would help when they could. I took time off work. I drove 3 hours twice a week to take her to appointments, to help with grocery shopping, to just sit and keep her company. I documented all of this too, every mile driven, every hour spent, every family member who was too busy to help. When Christmas approached, my grandmother made an announcement. She was tired, she said. Tired of hosting, tired of the stress, tired of trying to coordinate everyone's schedules. This year, she wanted to do something different. She wanted to spend the holiday with just one person, the person who had shown up for her when it really mattered. She wanted to spend Christmas with me. Alone. The family erupted. My aunt accused me of manipulating an elderly woman. My cousin suggested my grandmother was being influenced by someone with ulterior motives. They demanded a family meeting, threatened to contest any decisions made under duress, threw around words like elder abuse and undue influence. But my grandmother was sharp as ever. She calmly explained that she was simply choosing to spend her time with people who valued hers. She said that if they had concerns about her mental state, they were welcome to bring in doctors for evaluation, but she was confident in her choices. That Christmas was perfect. Just me and my grandmother, cooking together, exchanging thoughtful gifts, watching old movies. No stress, no drama, no feeling like an afterthought. For the first time in years, I felt like I truly belonged somewhere. The rest of the family spent Christmas together at my aunt's house, probably talking about what a terrible person I had become, how I had turned their mother against them, how unfair it all was. My phone buzzed constantly with messages I didn't bother reading. But the best part came later. Update 1. 2 months after that perfect Christmas, my grandmother passed away peacefully in her sleep. I was devastated, genuinely heartbroken to lose the one person who had always made me feel valued. But even in my grief, I couldn't help but appreciate the timing of what happened next. The will reading was scheduled for the following week. My aunt and cousin showed up confident, probably expecting to inherit the house and split everything else among the grandchildren like they'd always assumed would happen. They had started making plans for the property, talking about selling it and dividing the proceeds. The lawyer began reading, and I watched their faces change as the reality sank in. Everything went to me. The house, the savings, the investments, even her jewelry collection. There were small bequests to local charities she supported, but nothing for the family members who had taken her for granted. My aunt stood up and demanded to see the original documents. She accused me of forging the will, of manipulating their mother in her final years, of stealing their inheritance through deception and lies. My cousin was crying, saying it wasn't fair, that they were her children and deserved something. But the lawyer calmly explained that my grandmother had updated her will multiple times over the past year, always with proper witnesses and sound mind evaluations. She had been very specific about her reasoning, even including a letter to be read aloud at the meeting. The letter was brutal in its honesty. My grandmother wrote about feeling abandoned by her own children, about watching them show up only for holidays and special occasions, while one grandson drove hours every week just to make sure she was okay. She wrote about Easter, about how hurt she was that they would exclude someone from family gatherings, about how that behavior revealed their true character. She ended the letter by saying that she was leaving everything to the one person who had proven that family was about more than blood relations or convenient timing. She was leaving it to someone who understood that love was demonstrated through actions, not just words. The room was silent except for my cousin's quiet sobbing. My aunt's face had gone through several color changes, settling on a deep red that suggested either embarrassment or rage. Probably both. They threatened to contest the will, of course. Spent thousands of dollars on lawyers trying to prove my grandmother was incompetent or that I had somehow coerced her. But the documentation was ironclad. Medical records showed she was mentally sharp until the end. Multiple witnesses could attest to her decision-making process. Most damning of all, there were records of their own neglect, their own absence during the times when she needed them most. The legal battle lasted 6 months and cost them more money than they could afford. In the end, they withdrew their contest and I took possession of everything, including the house where they used to hold their family gatherings. Update 2. Moving into my grandmother's house felt like coming home. Every room held memories of our conversations, of the time we spent together in those final months. But it also gave me the perfect platform for the final phase of my plan. I decided to host my own Easter gathering. Not for my biological family, obviously. Instead, I reached out to people from my blog, from the social media community I'd built around dealing with family rejection. I invited a dozen strangers who had become friends through shared experiences of being overlooked, excluded, and undervalued by their own relatives. We called it a chosen family Easter. Everyone brought a dish and a story about breaking free from toxic family dynamics. Some had cut contact with abusive parents. Others had been rejected for being different. All of us had found better relationships outside the families we were born into. I posted pictures on social media, made sure they were public, tagged the location. My biological family could see exactly what they were missing, could watch me surrounded by people who actually appreciated my presence. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The grandson they had excluded now hosting gatherings in the very house where they used to exclude him. My cousin sent a message asking if she and her kids could join us. She said they were sorry about Easter, about all the times they had made me feel unwanted, about how they handled the whole situation. She wanted to make things right. But I had learned something important over the past year. Apologies mean nothing without changed behavior, and I was done accepting table scraps of affection from people who had treated me like a convenience for so long. I told her they were welcome to start their own tradition, just like they had been doing for years. This gathering was for my chosen family, for people who had proven they valued each other's presence. The message I got back was exactly what I expected. Accusations that I was being petty, that I was destroying the family, that my grandmother would be disappointed in my behavior. But I knew better. My grandmother had seen exactly who these people were, and she had made her choice accordingly. Update 3. It's been 2 years since that first excluded Easter, and my life has completely transformed. The house is filled with laughter and love, just not from the people I originally expected. My chosen family has grown into a community of genuinely caring individuals who show up for each other consistently. The blog became a book. Finding Your Chosen Family hit bestseller lists and gave me financial independence beyond what my grandmother left me. Speaking engagements and consulting work followed. I help other people recognize and escape toxic family dynamics, teach them to build better relationships with people who actually value them. My biological family occasionally reaches out, usually around holidays or when they need something. My aunt wanted help when her husband lost his job. My cousin needed someone to co-sign a loan. They always frame these requests as opportunities for reconciliation, chances for me to prove I'm not holding grudges. But I've learned the difference between holding grudges and protecting boundaries. I'm not angry anymore, haven't been for a long time. I'm just done accepting less than I deserve from people who have repeatedly proven they don't prioritize my well-being. Sometimes I drive past the restaurant where they held my grandmother's disappointing 80th birthday party. I think about the chain of events that started with being excluded from Easter dinner, about how that moment of hurt transformed into something that completely changed my life's trajectory. They probably think they won in the end, that I became bitter and isolated, that I destroyed family relationships out of spite. But they don't understand what actually happened. I didn't destroy anything. I simply stopped trying to build relationships with people who were using different blueprints. The house where they once celebrated without me now hosts gatherings every month. Birthday parties, holiday celebrations, simple dinner parties where everyone actually wants to be there. These people know my story, understand the journey that brought me to them, appreciate the space we've all created together. Last Easter, while we were cleaning up after our third annual chosen family celebration, someone asked me if I ever regretted how things turned out. I looked around at the faces of people who had driven hours to be here, who had rearranged their schedules to attend, who brought thoughtful gifts and genuine enthusiasm. I thought about my biological family, probably gathered somewhere making plans I wasn't included in, probably still telling themselves that I'm the problem, that I chose to walk away from perfectly good relationships because I couldn't handle being treated like everyone else. But they're wrong about that last part. I walked away because I finally realized I didn't have to accept being treated worse than everyone else. I walked away because I learned that family isn't about blood relations or shared history. It's about showing up, consistently and genuinely, for people who do the same for you. The best revenge isn't getting even. It's building something better than what you lost. Standing in that house, surrounded by my chosen family, I realized I had won something far more valuable than any inheritance or viral social media post. I had won the right to be celebrated instead of tolerated, valued instead of included out of obligation. That empty driveway on Easter morning 2 years ago had felt like the end of everything. But it was actually the beginning of the life I was meant to live, with people who were meant to be in it. They thought they were teaching me a lesson about punctuality and managing expectations. Instead, they taught me that some doors need to close before better ones can open. And for that lesson, I'm actually grateful.